Okay, in 3, 2, 1.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. And to those who have joined via Facebook Live and also YouTube, and to those who are calling via the telephone, I am Joan Hay Horton, and this is Impact. This is a virtual ministry designed to provide coping strategies, helpful resources, hope and courage to struggling, hurting people. On behalf of Pastor Joshua Duanran and the congregation of Sharon Seventh-day Adventist Church, located at 115 South Fifth Avenue, Mount Vernon, New York, we welcome you. Anchoring the program this evening, ladies and gentlemen, is Karen Christian and Terence Clark. They will be introducing the experts and they will navigate us through the financial process. Let us pray, ladies and gentlemen. Our Father and our God, great deliverer, sustainer, it's only by your grace and mercy that we have been preserved. Thank you, Lord. Thanks for the dedication of your children who have been working assiduously and relentlessly to save lives and provide comfort to all those in need. This evening, Lord, we ask that as we seek to navigate financial strategies through Impact with the expertise, knowledge, and skills of this team, that your people will be truly blessed. We pray in the name of the Father, in the name of the Son, and in the name of the Holy Spirit. Ladies and gentlemen,
Amen.
Impact.
Amen.
Good evening. My name is Karen Christian, and it is my pleasure this afternoon to introduce one of our presenters to you, Tracy John. Tracy John is a senior accountant with a publishing firm, and she's also an enrolled agent with the IRS. And we welcome you, Tracy, this afternoon to our Impact entitled Finance in You and COVID-19.
Thank
Thank
you,
you.
Karen.
And I am Terence Clark, and I will be introducing Casey Gordon. And I think Casey will better able to explain who she is than the way I would have done it. So let me hear from Casey.
Hi, Terence. Thank you so much. My name is Casey Ann Gordon. I go by Casey. I'm a wealth advisor with 20 years. I currently work with Claris Group, and prior to that, I worked with UBS with one of the, I think, top teams at UBS. I was there for 17 of my 20-year career. So, and last year left to become an independent advisor with Claris Group.
Okay, excellent. Thank you very much. Karen?
Okay, thank you. And now, Tracy, how can you advise us, given the current COVID environment that we are in right now? How do you suppose that we can manage this through this economic crisis that we're now in?
Well, I'm sure Casey will agree with me that financial planning is not a one size fits all. Everybody's situation is going to be different. So during this crisis, some people are going to lose their jobs or have already lost their jobs. Some people are still working. Some people have suffered illness. Some people temporarily out of work. So each situation is going to be different. However, one factor we all should have in common is trust in God.
Amen.
Proverbs chapter 3, 5, and 6 say, trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not unto your own understanding. In all your ways, acknowledge him and he shall direct your path. Even while we trust in God, we have to do our necessary planning as well. So we trust him. So if you've lost your job, of course, go collect unemployment. Try to cut down on costs or your expenses. You know, now is not the time to go shopping and buy things. So even if you get extra money, try to save, try to economize. If you have not lost your job, please do some saving. save, because things are getting rough. So continue to save, continue to pay your bills as usual. Even if there are breaks on mortgage interest, you are still working, continue to do what you are doing and save up more. If you have lost a family member, so there is loss of income, find out what is out there, call your bank, see what, if you could get that mortgage interest. You could get the forbearance for the 3 months, the 90-day forbearance. Find out what's out there. But most importantly, we're going to trust in God, because it's through crisis that we become much stronger.
So you use the word, Tracy. What does forbearance mean?
It's, you won't be able to pay them. You won't pay the mortgage. You'll get the break from the bank where you don't pay the mortgage for the 3 months, the 90 days. So on every bank and every state, it's going to be different. It varies per state. So if we have people outside New York State listening, it's going to be different. So your best shot is to call your bank, and the New York State requires now that all banks have it posted on their website, how they're going to do that, what they're doing, and the link, the application forms and all of that.
Okay, certainly, and I'm glad for that, Tracy. So we have to actually, first of all, seek to cut back on our expenditure, especially those unnecessary expenditure. Let us not yield ourselves. I think the government and the governors have helped us in some regard by closing some of those places that we would normally find ourselves shopping. So at least they have done their part in assisting us. Yes, but we have to play our part also in cutting back on our expenses. But Kasian, I'm wondering, how then do I create an emergency fund based on the current income that I have? And part two to the question is also, what time frame should this cover? How do I create an emergency fund? Tracy mentioned some money to put aside. How do I do that?
All right. So one of the first things that you need to do is look at your expenses, right? How much are you spending on a monthly basis on the basics? So it's not the shopping that we just talked about. And yes, those stimulus checks have come in. So for many people, it's not the time to go and buy the TV that you don't need. So it's looking at how much money you're spending on a monthly basis. Again, almost at the bare minimum. What do you need to get by? And for it differs based on whether you're a single person or a couple. So for a single person, they typically tell you that it's 6 months. So if something were to happen, you lose your job, as 20+ million people have in the US in the last 3 to 4 weeks, right? For you to have 6 months of your expenses sitting almost in a bank account, doing very little. Or if you're a couple, 3 months, because the argument is that it's unlikely that both people will lose their jobs at the same time. Although in these economic times, we are seeing that that's actually has happened. So again, the time frame will differ per person, but it really comes down to looking at what your expenses are. And I think, as Tracy started saying out, for each person, it's a very different number. The number that I need for my monthly expense could look very different from what Karen or Terrence needs on a monthly basis, based on how you run your household.
Excellent, thank you.
Okay. So just listening to the comments from both of you all, where you're telling us, to curb on our spending and our expense. And given the current climate where today one person is working, another one soon loses their job, then you become the sole breadwinner in the house. And I have to cut back on my expenses because now I have more expenses. Even though I'm cutting back, I have more expenses to take on because the other person in the household has been laid off or, can't get a job right now. So do you think it would make sense for me to still continue contributing to my retirement plans like 401k or the 403b? I mean, how effective would that be at this point in time to continue contributing to those types of plans?
Okay. One of the reasons why a lot of people want to cut back, because they are concerned about the economic climate, the stock market, and it's not doing well and they're losing money. So if you are considering like there is income shortage in your home and you need money, and I would not use my retirement plan as the first area to cut off. Because if your employer is also contributing towards that plan, you don't want to lose that money your employer is contributing. And although it's tax deductible. So if your plan is a tax deductible, you have a traditional plan, and your employer is contributing, you may not want to cut that off. You may, if you are short on cash, you may want to reduce by a little, but it wouldn't be the first thing I would advise somebody to do. And also, if you don't want to stop that. You don't want to stop that. And if you lost your job, you don't want to pull it out either, because you're going to be hit with the taxes on that at the end of the year. When you file your taxes, you're going to pay the tax, the penalty, and all of that on there. So it should not be your first. But if you are all down and out, and that's your only way out, of course, it's your money. But it should not be your first option.
So
Yes,
agreed.
Casey, let me hear your view on this.
So I agree with Tracy, right? It
Yes.
shouldn't be the first line of defense. However, if you've cut back, you've literally done everything, and you don't have that emergency savings, right? You can either reduce the amount that you're contributing, but as Tracy said, try to stay at the amount that your company is matching you. So if they say, if you put in 3%, we're going to put in 3%, make sure as best as you can, you keep putting in that 3%, because guess what? You're automatically almost multiplying your money, right? Without even doing anything. And while the stock market is rocking and rolling, and yes, you might have lost money, you don't realize that loss until you actually sell it. So please, whatever you're doing, don't panic sell, because this is not the right time to do it. And also, while the markets are lower in value, this is now a good time for you to be buying into the market if you can afford it. So we're not even talking about monies outside of your retirement at the moment. We're just talking about monies that are in your retirement to continue contributing to that. This year, the penalties, again, if you absolutely need it, the penalties have been waived for this year, because the government understands that people will need to potentially draw on these assets. So while you might have to pay the taxes, there's a rule that's been put in place that you can take money out and pay it back over the course of 3 years. That is not usually the case. This year, they're also allowing you to take the money out, and if you are not able to replace it, that you won't have the penalty associated. That's normally 10% right off the bat. So the government is doing special things this year, but again, it should not be the first line of defense if you can afford other places.
Okay, thank you very much, Casey. And you mentioned stocks a while ago, and I know there are a lot of persons desperately in need of cash, and as such, they are trying to dispose of the stocks that they may have in various institutions. In fact, when you look around and you see the stock market going down now on Wall Street, the Chicago Mercantile, and all across Europe, the stock market has been going down. Should this is a time right now, individuals should be buying stocks?
If you can afford to, you might want to put some of your money in. Do I want to put all of my money in if I've had cash on the sidelines? Probably not, but it doesn't hurt to have some exposure. The concept that you want to always follow, which is not always the case, is buy low and sell high, right? And I think we have a tendency to want to buy high because everybody feels good, everybody's happy, the markets are doing great, and then end up selling low when the market goes down and we start panicking. So we actually want to have a more disciplined process and assess, why are we selling? You initially brought that point up, that people are selling. Why are you selling? Are you selling because you're panicked, or because you no longer believe in the fundamentals of the company? Are you going to buy something else that you now believe in? So there are other factors in just, you know what, the markets are down, let me put my money there. It's especially when you're talking about smaller dollar amounts to invest, you want to do something that you can get a diversified portfolio in. And again, not putting in, if you have $100,000, not putting all $100,000 in at this moment, because there's potential for it to go back down, or there's potential for it to go up. It's better to do dollar cost averaging.
Okay.
Okay. So Tracy, there's this talk about the stimulus check and the government releasing stimulus checks to help boost the economy. Is it that everyone will be receiving a stimulus check? How is that going to be allocated?
Well, there is no talk anymore, Karen. It's reality. We've got our check.
Yes.
Many people were rejoicing on Wednesday.
This week, yes.
It's rolling out. So not everybody will get one, unfortunately, but all those who earn less than 75,000. So single people who earn 75,000 or less will get $1,200. That's single, no children. Those with children will get children below the ages of 17 will get $500. Married couples earning less than 99,000 will also get 1,200 each, plus for the kids, 500.
Wait, that's
Anything-
150. Married
Yeah,
couples,
married people,
150.
150. Thank you,
50,
75,
yes.
75. 150. For the single people, if they earn more than 75, less than 99, it will phase out. It starts phasing out after 75, but they will get, I think they lose $5 per each $100.
$100.
Yeah. So these are the people that will get. Now, if you were not qualified for 2019, and if you lost your job in 2020, you lost your job now, when you file your tax return for 2020, and if you earn less than the 75, you will get the 1,200 at that time.
So that's good to know.
Yes.
That's great. That's great.
Some
That's
people
great.
get, no
All
matter
right.
what, it could be $1. Some people get.
So this is a question that's come up, Tracy. So I'm going to ask the question. This has come up quite a bit. Is this a credit, or people are going to have to pay it back when they file their tax returns next year? And I know a lot of people seem to have that concern.
It's a credit. It's a tax credit. You will not pay it back. Some people are also asking if it's an advance on their refund for 2020. No, it's not an advance either. It's a credit. It's free money the government gave. You don't have to pay it back. So don't worry about it. Just enjoy your $1,200. Spend it wisely or save it. Most importantly, save it.
Save it.
Save
Save it.
Save it.
That's the
Or if
best
you
thing.
lost
Yes.
your job, then it came handy.
And I know somebody posted on this, return your tithe on it too. Hello, somebody.
You got that, girl.
You got that. You got that. Certainly.
Yeah, it's free
certainly.
money. It's an increase. It's an increase.
So this money is a grant from the government, and it has no repayment. It has no offset against your returns for 2021. So this is money that out of the crisis, the government saw it prudent to give to each working citizen. Yes, and not every person. Those who are actually being employed and are being adversely affected. But what I want to find out from you though, Kasian, what other types of planning should I be thinking of, especially if I have a family?
That's a great question. So some of the things that should come to mind when you're planning is insurance, right? And especially if you have younger children that you need to take care of. What if something were to happen to you, the breadwinner, or one of the breadwinners? How would your family survive on the income that they have? So that's a very, very important thing to look at, as when you're doing planning for your family. Do you have a will, right? Because as you can see, how many thousands of people, tens of thousands of people have just died. And it's not something that we could say we could have planned for or thought of or anything else. So what are other, like a will, again, making sure that while you're alive, you get to say what happens to either your family or your assets or your children or whatever it is that's important to you. What happens to you as an individual if you're in the hospital and you can't make decisions? When you typically do a will, there are other planning documents that go along with it. So a healthcare proxy, Is there somebody in charge, that can make decisions on your behalf? Of course, that you trust, that will be able to speak on your behalf if you can't speak. Is there somebody who's going to be able to take care of the bills? So having a power of attorney to be able to do all of those things. So while it's not a conversation that we love talking about, it's a very, very important conversation, because these are things that you never know what the future holds. We're told that we're not promised tomorrow, and sometimes we're not even promised this afternoon, right? So it's very, very important that we take care of those things, especially while we have a say to be able to plan on how to do this. And this point is, I think, absolutely worth saying. As we're looking at and talking about retirement assets, when we have those assets, they do not pass by the function of a will. Okay. So if you had, I'm gonna say, your ex-husband, your ex-wife, your ex from way back when on a 401k plan that you left at the company, or some kind of retirement plan, guess what? Those assets will automatically go to whomever the beneficiary designates. So you want to make sure that when you've either left a company and their assets, or you move them to wherever else, that they have the proper beneficiaries that you want. And I can't stress that enough.
Okay, excellent, excellent. So it's really, really critical that we make a will. And it's important that the will must be made while you are alive.
Hello, you can't make it when you're dead.
All right. So those of us who are hearing, certainly it's critical that you make a will. But I'm wondering, I have made a will before. Can I change my will before I die?
Absolutely. Your will should actually be changed or looked at, even if you're not making any changes, when there are any major life events, right?
Certainly.
So at 25, I did a will when I was single, just for the experience of it, because of, the nature of what I did. And then at 30 something, when my life changed and my circumstances changed, I had to do a completely new will, because so many things had happened. And guess what? In a few years, it will likely be that I will have to do another will. So is it expensive to keep updating those wills? And by the way, there's something called a codicil. So if something major hasn't happened, but you want to add something to your will, you can easily add it without having to redo the whole will. And that's called a codicil. So that's an addition to the will. You seem like you have a question, but making sure that it's current, and again, the people who you wanted, because relationships change, right? So the people that you wanted to do certain things or give certain assets to, whatever else, making sure that that's still current. And if new children are born.
Certainly. So it is important that I make a will, and that the will can be changed. And the will doesn't necessarily mean I'm going to die when I make that will. Okay.
No, it's planning. It's prudent planning.
Prudent financial planning, certainly. What will really happen to my asset should, God forbid, that I die and don't make a will?
I think the government, it has to go through probate. It becomes a nightmare for the people who are surviving and have to deal with trying to find out what kind of assets you have, where you have them, because, and I think a lot of us are Caribbean, right? So we're secretive and we don't tell anybody anything. So now imagine, sorry, I'm very practical. Imagine the person who has to go after us, trying to figure out where the car title is, where the house thing is, where the this is, where the that is. It takes up so much time. And guess what? It's the attorney who has to help you through this process, who now you're going to have to pay. So if you do all of these things while you're alive, and you can put these things into place, and somebody knows where your important documents are, your family does not have to go through the nightmare that, otherwise they're already grieving, right? Or hopefully they're already grieving. They shouldn't have to go through that difficult time trying to figure out the assets. And again, this is where insurance is so important, because if there's insurance, they also don't have to figure out how they're going to bury you either at such another difficult time as they're grieving.
Okay, excellent.
I also think it's poor stewardship not to have a will.
Yeah, definitely. Yes, it is. It is. It is. Always important to ensure that we have a will in place, whatever stage of life we are in. And this will, as we mentioned, can be changed anytime whilst you are alive. Yes. And once that will is in force, it remains to be your last testament, your last wishes. as to how your assets are actually distributed to your loved ones and to those you care about most. Karen, you have any questions?
No, I think at this time we will open it up to calling.
Door callings, excellent.
If you have any questions.
Anyone online have a question, any financial question?
I think I'm hearing someone trying to say something.
Yes, but I'm not hearing the question. All right. In terms of savings, I may receive that stimulus check and I have no immediate use for it at this time. Where is the best place can I place that money where, one, it would be secured, and two, where I can earn the best interest or return on that money?
So I actually got this question earlier from a friend earlier this week. And I know typically, especially if this is the money that you don't want to put at risk,
Yes.
it's going into a bank account, right? It's either a bank account or a CD that's going to be very, very secure. Your interest rate is not going to be anything to talk about or to write home about because the interest rates are so low, but your money will be safe. And as long as the company that, actually it's FDIC secured up to $250,000.
Definitely.
So that money is as safe as it gets. It's not going to get you. Again, it's where you take risk that there's a potential of a reward. And if you don't want to put this money at risk, it's going to be safe and secure. Think about the man with the talent, right? It's going to be safe and secure, but you're not going to earn much on it.
Okay, it is safe that way.
You're on mute, Tracy.
You're on mute. Tracy, you're gonna turn it on.
Yes.
Yes.
Also, if you don't have an account with Atlantic Union Revolving Fund,
Okay.
you could
I'll try send a bill for that ad.
you could also put it there. They accept deposits in increments of 1,000. It's not FDIC insured, but I want to tell you, it's also invested in the kingdom of God. When
Okay.
you put money there, your conference, churches within your conference are able to take loans to build churches based on the amount of money you have there. So I really encourage us, Seventh-day Adventists, to utilize Atlantic Union Revolving Fund. The interest rate is 1.25. It's better than what you would get at Chase or the ordinary banks around here. So utilize that as well.
Okay.
So we got one question that came in through Facebook, and the question is, what is the process for making a will? And I guess, Casey, since you were talking a lot about the wills, I'll direct that question to you if you don't mind.
Absolutely. So it's finding a good attorney, right? And different attorneys will charge differently, but it's also starting to think about whether, if you have kids and younger kids, what do you want to have? If you have a spouse, having that conversation with them, because I can tell you that while it's a necessary thing to do, it's not an easy thing, but it's definitely worth the exercise of going through and documenting everything. You can have, depending on what your assets are, a simple will, or it can become more complicated based on how much you have in assets, if you need trusts, all these different things. So I'm happy to talk to the person offline, but one of the first steps is either talking to a planner who will then introduce you to an estate attorney who will be able to draft the will for you. And there are multiple back and forth with the attorney, because you might have something or in your mind that you think you want it to be done, and the attorney will say that that won't work for whatever reason, and legalities and whatever else. So it's a little bit of a back and forth process until you refine and get to a final document.
Okay. I have a question here, and it's a follow-up on the 401k, 403b plan, retirement plan. There are a lot of persons in or church in our community. They are, I would classify them in the informal sector. That is, they may not be formally in the economy and as such may not able to receive any. Can you advise those persons as to how they can put aside something for the rainy day? They have no formal retirement plan.
So they,
Go ahead.
Oh,
Go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
so they can actually start an IRA with a bank,
Yeah.
to create their own retirement vehicle. They would receive the tax benefit by the tax deduction.
Right.
The limits are lower. I think it's what, 6,000, correct me, Tracy? It's like, I think 6,000 currently. And if you're over 50, you get to put in an additional $1,000. So it's called a catch-up contribution. So that's a way for you to reduce your taxable income on an annual basis and save for retirement. Now, there are different rules when it comes to taking the monies out, but this is one way that you can do it if you don't have access to a 401k plan or a 403b plan.
Okay.
Okay, and also when you're going to do that, what KCN just said, you open one with your bank. The bank might ask if you want to do a traditional one or a Roth IRA. And those who are not high income earners, I would say you choose based on how much you think you're going to make when you are older. So if you expect to be earning more during retirement, which is unlikely for most people, you use the traditional, so you get the immediate tax benefit. And when you are older, when you are retired and you are withdrawing from it, your taxable income will be less. So you'll be in a lower tax bracket, so you'll be paying less or maybe no taxes on there if all you have is that and Social Security. However, if you have major investments and you expect to be earning a lot during retirement, I would advise to open a Roth right now. A Roth, you pay the taxes now, so when you are retired and you pull it out, you won't pay any taxes. But I know we don't want any Roth. We want the traditional to get the tax benefit now.
Actually, so this is where I have a differing opinion. Different vehicles offer different things, right? And the traditional might work for some because you're getting the tax break now and then you have to pay the taxes later if you think you're going to be in a lower tax bracket. And if you qualify for a Roth, right, because you have to qualify based on your income, and I believe it's under 100 and something thousand if you're a single person. If you can afford to do the Roth, there are definite benefits. You can, and again, if you have a lot of money and you will not need that money in retirement, you can pass those assets to other people, right? Because when you have a traditional, you have to take a minimum required distribution. And as of the end of last year, it changed to 72. With a Roth, you don't have those rules. So that money can continue to grow for a very, very long time. And I'll tell you that there is no all or none. If you have the option, you can do both a traditional and a Roth to be able to have a flavor of the two and get the tax benefits of, I guess, one of them now and then the other later.
Okay, excellent.
So
excellent.
We have another question that came in, and the question is there a percentage of my income that you would recommend for saving?
It depends on how much you're making, right? So 10% of $100,000, and I'm going to do it on an annual basis. My math is always a little bit iffy, would be like $10,000, right? So can you afford, if you're making $100,000 gross, can you afford to put away 10,000? Or can you afford to do higher? It's really what you can afford. The numbers will vary. It's, again, making sure that you're putting away and getting the tax benefit and the match in a 401k plan. So you're doing that in the retirement space, but also having that investments in your personal space so that if emergencies happen, like now, you have monies to access, but also once you get to a certain cash amount that you start investing above and beyond. I don't think for some reason in our communities, people don't know that they can actually invest monies in their personal account, just like they would in an IRA. So if you've managed to save a ton of money in your in your personal account and you're well above your emergency numbers, it makes sense to start looking at potential investments for that amount that is above, so you can potentially have some more earning power.
Okay. Let me just hear, and as we seek to try and wrap up shortly, when is the best time for us, should I decided to go into the stock market? When is the best time for us to put aside money in that instrument, the stock market itself?
Listen, I'm still waiting for my crystal ball. Um, so, you know what? I don't know if there's a real best time. We can never time the stock market.
Okay.
And those who typically try to time the stock market usually fail. It just doesn't work, right? In my 20 years of experience, it doesn't work. So it's better to have a more systematic approach and just trying to put in some money over the course of time, not dropping, as I said before, not jumping it all at once, maybe having a system where you're going in a little bit at a time. So you're experiencing different points in the stock market, and not trying to, if we had tried to time the market when it dropped 20 something, I think, or even close to 30%, our hearts wouldn't have allowed us to actually enter into the market at that point. But it started going back up, and it's up like 20 something percent from where it was. So I think that's why it's just more important to get your feet in, do a little bit of time over time to be able to get the exposure.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much for that one. I have one question I see someone coming to me with. They're asking, what do you mean by when we diversify the portfolio?
That means that you don't have Amazon stock alone.
Okay.
And that's just the easy example that came to mind. You don't have all cash, you don't have all bonds, you don't have all equities. So a diversified portfolio will give you different either asset classes, sub-asset classes, different industries. So you have a mix of different things within the portfolio. So if energy has been one, you know, that's been really, really beaten up, right? So you don't have all energy, because if energy really falls, you've lost 50 something percent of your money, and you don't, no one's going to like that feeling. So if you have some energy, some healthcare, some consumer staples, some other different types of companies within your portfolio, you're going to be able to weather it a lot better than just having one thing.
Certainly. And you may want to also extend your portfolio, not only in the diversification of the various stocks, but you may also want to go into other eye-healing investment that Tracy spoke of also. So if I want, depending on the risk that I may want to take, I may want to put some funds in the stock. I want to put some in a high-yielding investment, some in a secured saving account, and so that the risk is spread right across. So in case anything should happen to any of these portfolio, then I will still have some money elsewhere. So in short, we are not putting all our eggs in one basket.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Karen, you want to wrap up for us? I think.
So I guess we have no other questions coming in. So Tracy and Casey, we'd like to thank you very much for taking time out to be with us here on our Impact series and giving us information in regards to handling our finances through the COVID crisis. I guess we will now hand over to Sister Horton.
Thank you.
Okay.
Ladies and gentlemen, virtual audience, we thank you for joining us. We thank everyone for joining us this evening. We hope that you have found this session very educational. I have, and we hope that you have found some coping strategies that we all need in this very trying time. We also hope that you will now be empowered to navigate yourself through this very trying period. Join us again next week at 7:30 p.m. when we will continue this session on impact as we continue to look at our financial strategies. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, and keep safe.
Good evening.